Priscilla thought the last thing Elvis left her were memories and a mansion. But in 2024, a sealed envelope surfaced from a Graceland storage crawlspace. Inside, a single page, water-spotted, signed AP. The line he wrote isn't what fans expect, and the truth behind it could rewrite their love story. Stay to the end, because the last sentence in that note turns heartbreak into a promise. January 8, 2024. Elvis Presley's birthday. The North Annex of Graceland, known to staff as the Cedar Room, smelled of wood polish, old leather, and the faint hum of dehumidifiers. Every year, archivists cleaned through boxes no one had opened since the 70s. The room was still, except for the soft shuffle of gloves against cardboard. Miriam Cole, the lead archivist, had been cataloging wardrobe pieces since sunrise. Nearby, Ray Blue Dalton, the security chief, moved a flashlight beam across the wooden slats of the back wall. Then, something small slid free and hit the floor with a dry, papery sound. It wasn't a photograph. It was an envelope. Thin, yellowed, sealed with a crumbling red wax stamp. The air in the room changed as soon as it landed. Miriam crouched, lifting it carefully. The paper looked water-spotted, but on the back, someone had written in pencil, "Deliver if she ever asks." The handwriting was neat, deliberate, like it belonged to a man used to signing autographs but not used to confessing secrets. Blue's voice cracked the silence. "Who's she?" Miriam didn't answer. She was staring at the faint shadow of ink showing through the envelope. Wide loops, old-style script, something hauntingly familiar. They laid the envelope under the desk lamp. The wax was brittle. Around its edges, faint blue ink showed a name written with a fountain pen. 2 words. To Priscilla. The sound of the dehumidifiers filled the silence. Miriam swallowed. "If this is what I think it is, we can't just open it." Blue nodded, but his eyes stayed on the name. Then again it fell for a reason. In that small, sealed shape, decades of silence seemed to tremble. What could Elvis have written so late, and hidden so deep, that nobody found it until now? The thought made Miriam's chest tighten. She'd seen fans cry over stage scarves, over ticket stubs. But this wasn't memorabilia. It was something heavier, human. She slid the envelope into an acid-free sleeve and logged the find, date stamping it, Graceland North Annex Cedar Room, January 8, 2024. For a moment, she almost wrote birthday discovery but stopped herself. That felt too eerie. Blue turned off his flashlight and looked up at the portrait of Elvis on the far wall, the one with the grin that hid exhaustion. "Guess the king still has something to say," he murmured. The clock ticked louder in the quiet. Miriam touched the label again. "Deliver if she ever asks." What moment makes someone write those words? And what kind of love hides in an envelope for nearly 50 years? She exhaled slowly. The flap was unbroken. For now. The camera would linger on the seal, fragile, glinting red, just before cutting to black. Miriam didn't sleep that night. The words on the envelope replayed in her head like a broken record. Deliver if she ever asks. Who hides a letter like that? And why now, of all days? By morning, the Cedar Room felt different. The light through its high windows looked softer, like dust had turned to mist. Every sound, the click of pens, the hum of the climate control, seemed quieter, waiting for someone to make a choice. Protocol said log, photograph, store. But this wasn't a costume or a concert set list. This was a secret. Miriam reached for her phone. There was only one person who had the right to see it. At 10:04 a.m., she called Donna Kaplan, Priscilla Presley's longtime assistant. Donna's voice cracked mid-sentence when she heard the words, "sealed envelope," and "to Priscilla." Within the hour, the familiar black SUV rolled through the iron gates. Security cameras caught her stepping out. Priscilla Presley, now 78, in a cream coat and dark sunglasses. The cold Memphis air carried the scent of magnolia from the front lawn. She looked smaller than people remembered, but there was still steel in her walk. She entered the Cedar Room without ceremony, eyes scanning the tables stacked with Elvis's belongings. Rings, scarves, a pair of aviators still smudged with stage makeup. Her hand paused over the envelope. "Where was it?" she asked. Miriam pointed toward the wooden panel where it had fallen. Priscilla stared at it for a long moment, then whispered, "He used to hide things in the walls when he thought people were watching." She picked up the envelope with gloved fingers. The wax seal glimmered like dried blood under the lamp. Her voice was steady, but her breath wasn't. "If it's his," she said softly, "we'll face it." The words hit the room like a vow. Donna stood near the door, clutching her notepad to her chest. Blue watched from the corner, arms crossed but eyes wet. Miriam whispered, "Ma'am, are you sure?" Priscilla smiled faintly. "If it's meant to stay closed, the seal will hold." For a long beat no one moved. Then her thumb pressed gently along the edge. The wax cracked. A sound like a small thunder rolled through the still air. Everyone froze. Even the hum of the machines seemed to vanish. The envelope opened just enough to reveal a single fold of yellowed paper inside. Priscilla didn't pull it free. Not yet. She just stared at the handwriting, the blue fountain pen ink looping across the top line. Her eyes glistened. It was unmistakable. "Elvis," she whispered. Miriam's throat tightened. She felt like she'd stepped into someone's unfinished goodbye. What would you do with a message from the person who broke and built your life? Is closure a gift or a wound reopening? Priscilla took a deep breath, and with trembling hands, she began to unfold the page. The room braced. The world was about to hear him again. The paper unfolded with the fragility of old wings. Every crease whispered years of silence. A faint hotel watermark bled through the top. Las Vegas Hilton, August 12, 1977, 2:10 a.m. 5 days before Elvis died. Miriam stepped closer, but Priscilla held the letter like glass. The handwriting was the same looping blue she had once seen on birthday cards. Quick but elegant. The ink had faded at the edges, but the first line was still bold enough to sting. "Scylla, I'm sorry I learned love by losing it." The air left the room. Blue's flashlight slipped against the table with a dull clink. Priscilla read the line again, lips moving soundlessly, as if her heart was catching up to her eyes. The note trembled in her hands. Below it, more words, short, honest, almost plain. He wrote about Lisa Marie's birth, about falling asleep in hospital hallways between shows, about missing small birthdays while the world screamed for encores. He wrote, "I thought fame would feed us both. It only fed the noise." The letter wasn't written like a confession. It was written like a man trying to make peace with a mirror. Miriam felt her chest tighten. This isn't history, she thought. It's a heartbeat. Then came a line that froze everyone. "If you ever wonder whether it mattered, tell our girl yes." The room went utterly still. Even the light seemed to hold its breath. A soft gasp left Donna's throat. She turned away, pretending to adjust her glasses, but a tear slipped down her cheek anyway. Priscilla's eyes didn't leave the page. "He never said that out loud," she whispered. Her voice cracked, not with grief, but with something heavier. Understanding. She reached the bottom of the note, where a faint smudge blurred the ink, maybe from sweat, maybe from tears. Then a final line, smaller, rushed, almost like a secret scribbled before someone knocked on the door. "Ask Joe for the tape." She frowned. "Joe?" Blue spoke quietly. "Esposito. His road manager." The name hit like a door opening to another mystery. Joe Esposito had been dead since 2016. But everyone in Elvis's circle knew. If the king left instructions for Joe, there was something important behind them. Something personal. Miriam took the letter to the lamp. The words shimmered faintly under the light, blue over beige. She could almost imagine him sitting at a hotel desk, body tired, heart restless, writing between the roar of the strip and the hum of the minibar. Elvis, alone with a fountain pen, choosing words he never had time to say. The thought sent shivers through her. What drives a man loved by millions to whisper to one woman from the edge of his life? Priscilla folded the letter gently, pressing her palm against the paper as if to memorize its warmth. "I want to know about the tape," she said. "We owe him that." Miriam nodded, already feeling the momentum of something larger than all of them. The note had spoken. Now it was demanding its echo. And somewhere, buried in boxes or memory, a voice waited to be heard again. The next step wasn't about finding words, it was about finding sound. The moment Priscilla read, "Ask Joe for the tape," the room shifted again. It wasn't just grief now. It was purpose. Blue stepped closer. "Joe Esposito," he said. If Elvis trusted anyone, it was him. But Joe had been gone for 8 years. His archives, his storage units, split between family, collectors, museums. Miriam turned to her database. There's no mention of any tape. Donna hesitated. Wait. He once told me a story about a cassette Elvis made at the Hilton. Said it was labeled Priscilla, Tea Garden. He laughed about it. Thought it meant a song demo or maybe an inside joke. Priscilla looked up sharply. Tea Garden. That was a lounge in the Hilton. He used to write there after shows. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. For a second, even the fluorescent lights flickered. Miriam began scrolling the digital inventory faster, fingers trembling. Nothing under Tea Garden. Nothing under Scylla. Blue crossed his arms, thinking. There's one thing we never logged. He nodded toward the storage ledger. A note from 1988. Unprocessed bootleg trunk. Confiscated 1980s. Nobody had ever gone through it because the tapes were unlabeled or blank. Minutes later, they wheeled out a dusty trunk. Its metal hinges squealed open like they hadn't moved in decades. Inside were old reels, Polaroids, and faded Scotch brand cassettes. One of them was marked in thick marker, FGT. Blue exhaled. FG. Tea Garden. The handwriting was fast, uneven, but the T had the same long curl as the "to Priscilla" on the envelope. Miriam didn't speak. She reached for the cassette with gloved hands and placed it on the desk beside the letter. The two relics, paper and tape, looked like echoes of each other. Priscilla whispered, "That's his handwriting." They moved to the media room, a dim, temperature-controlled space filled with museum-grade playback decks. Blue found a functioning machine. The tape clicked into place. The moment stretched. Then, soft static, the hiss of magnetic tape meeting time. A stool creaked. A man's breath. And then, Elvis's voice. Not the stage roar. Not the Vegas charm. Something smaller, bare. He was speaking, not singing. "Scylla," he began, the sound fuzzy but warm. "This ain't for the record books." Donna covered her mouth. Tears fell silently. Priscilla's knees weakened. She gripped the edge of the table for balance. The voice continued, cracked but gentle. "You told me once that love isn't a show. You were right. I just kept forgetting where the stage ended." A pause. The shuffle of paper. The click of a pen tapping the mic. Then 3 quiet guitar chords. He started humming "Love Me Tender." But the melody sounded slower, sadder, like he was playing for an empty room. His voice dipped into the verse, softer than any recording the world had ever heard. The hairs on Miriam's arms lifted. It wasn't performance, it was confession. Can a voice bridge years the way hands cannot? What does an apology sound like when sung to one person? The tape hissed again. Then his tone shifted, gentle, trembling. Near the mic, "Elvis." Priscilla whispered, tears streaming. "What are you trying to tell me?" The answer came through the speaker, a new lyric. The room was silent except for the low hiss of the tape. Then came the sound of a pick brushing strings. Elvis's voice, older, breathier, filled the speakers. "Love me tender, love me true." The familiar melody floated, fragile and unguarded. But as the final verse came, the lyric changed. "For my love is learned with you." The word "learned" replaced yours. Just one syllable. Yet it hit like thunder. Priscilla's hand flew to her mouth. Donna gasped. Miriam felt goosebumps crawl up her arms. He wasn't just singing to her. He was answering her. Then, softly, Elvis spoke between chords, like he was talking to someone sitting a few feet away. "I never knew how to stay when things got quiet," he said. "Guess I only knew how to fill silence with noise." The mic picked up a faint laugh, tired and tender. "But you taught me the rest." It didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded like a man trying to untangle himself from regret. He strummed again, the guitar faintly out of tune. The next words came almost as a whisper. I didn't lose you, Scylla. I learned how to love you from where you are. Priscilla covered her face, sobbing. The sound echoed in the small room. Blue turned away, pretending to check a cable, but his jaw trembled. For a moment it felt like time folded in on itself. The king alive again, not on stage, but in a dim hotel room, whispering to the woman who knew both the man and the myth. Elvis chuckled at the end, as if aware of how raw it sounded. Then he added, give this to her when she's ready. A breath, a click, silence. Miriam stopped the tape, letting the machine whir to a halt. No one spoke for nearly a minute. Donna finally broke the stillness. He knew this wouldn't come out then, she said softly. Not while the world still wanted him to be untouchable. Priscilla wiped her tears, eyes red but steady. He wasn't apologizing for fame, she whispered. He was apologizing for forgetting he was human. She reached out and touched the cassette, fingers trembling. He wanted to be remembered as a man, not a monument. The air in the room seemed thicker, part grief, part awe. How can one sentence undo decades of silence? Is love ever really gone, or just waiting for a quieter room to return? Miriam exhaled shakily. This changes everything. Donna nodded. It does, but it's not for tabloids. It's for her. Outside, Memphis rain began to fall, drumming softly against the museum windows. It sounded like applause from another time. Blue looked over, voice low. So what do we do now? Priscilla didn't hesitate. We protect it, until the world is ready to hear it right. But even as she said it, the weight of the moment pressed on her chest. Because deep down, she knew, secrets this powerful don't stay buried for long. And once the world heard that line, nothing about their story would ever sound the same again. By the next morning, word of the discovery had already leaked. A single text from a staffer, just 8 words. They found a new Elvis recording at Graceland. Within hours, journalists circled like hawks over Memphis. Inside the Cedar Room, a storm brewed. Lawyers from the estate sat across from museum officials, their voices low but sharp. Contracts, copyrights, broadcast rights, it all blurred into paperwork. To them, it wasn't a love letter. It was property. Miriam stood near the wall, watching. She'd spent her career guarding Elvis's artifacts. But this was more than history. It was humanity. Donna tried to reason with the team. If you release it wrong, it becomes clickbait. He deserves better. A younger executive shrugged. The world deserves to hear it. It's Elvis. Anything else is selfish. Priscilla entered mid-argument, the room quieting instantly. She was calm, but the look in her eyes warned everyone. She had walked this battlefield before. Let's start with the truth, she said. This wasn't meant for fans. It was meant for forgiveness. The attorney leaned forward. Mrs. Presley, the public... She cut him off. The public has already had everything else. The stage, the voice, the legend. This one thing was his heart. For a moment, silence. Then Blue broke it. But maybe that's what the world needs now. A little heart. The line hung there, trembling between greed and grace. Priscilla looked back at the letter lying under its glass cover. The paper seemed to breathe with light. The water stain, the ink, the way the fold lines intersected. It felt alive, like Elvis was waiting for her to decide. She touched the spot where the ring mark had pressed faintly into the paper decades ago. He wanted it heard, she whispered, but not as gossip, as grace. Those words ended the debate. The room shifted from lawyers' chatter to curators' plans. A new exhibit, the last note. Only one paragraph of the letter displayed. The rest kept private. The tape, played once an hour in a dark, chapel-quiet alcove. Miriam handled the logistics. Donna curated the text. Blue built the viewing case himself, his hands steady despite the weight of history. As they worked, Priscilla lingered behind. She traced her initials on the protective glass with her fingertip. If people listen quietly, she murmured. Maybe they'll hear more than a song. Outside, fans were already gathering near the gates, unaware of what was coming, just sensing something sacred in the air. When does a private truth become a public good? Who owns a goodbye, the one who speaks it, the one who receives it, or the millions shaped by both? That night, press releases went out. Tickets opened. Opening day sold out in 12 minutes. Fans booked flights from Japan, Sao Paulo, and Tupelo. The secret was ready to meet the crowd. And for the first time in decades, Graceland would fall silent not from loss, but from listening. April 5, 2024. A soft Memphis rain glazed the sidewalks outside Graceland. Inside, the archive gallery glowed in amber light, every surface polished, every breath hushed. The exhibit was ready. The last note. Crowd capacity, 1,240. Timed entries, 15 minutes apart. People had flown in from Japan, Sao Paulo, London, and Tupelo. Some wore replica scarves. Others carried folded vinyl sleeves like prayer books. A girl in a denim jacket clutched her grandmother's hand. An old veteran adjusted his Presley pin. A young couple whispered about how their parents met at an Elvis show. Different lives, but one heartbeat. When the lights dimmed, a single line appeared on the wall. If you ever wonder whether it mattered, tell our girl yes. The crowd inhaled together. Then the tape began to roll. A low hiss, a stool creak. Elvis's voice filled the room, raw and close. Scylla. That one word pulled time backward. People leaned forward, drawn into the hush. He spoke softly, the same words discovered weeks before. This ain't for the record books. Then came the chords. Faint, slow, deliberate. Love me tender, love me true. The melody was smaller than the legend, and somehow that made it bigger. When he reached the altered lyric, "For my love is learned with you," a ripple went through the room. You could hear sniffles, a choked laugh, the rustle of tissues. Even the security guard near the door wiped his eye. Priscilla stood in the back row. Her hands were folded, not trembling. When that new line landed, she closed her eyes. Donna stood beside her, whispering. He found the words after all. The tape ended with his gentle chuckle. Give this to her when she's ready. Then silence. No applause. No movement. Just breathing. It felt like church without sermon, confession without priest. A minute passed before anyone dared to move. Then the grandmother reached down and squeezed her granddaughter's hand. That's what real love sounds like, she whispered. Priscilla opened her eyes. Tears glimmered, but she smiled through them. Thank you, she mouthed toward the ceiling. A flashbulb went off, one photo for the press, but no one spoke over the quiet. The crowd filed out slowly, faces soft, as if leaving a funeral where hope had replaced grief. Outside, journalists waited, microphones ready. One shouted, Mrs. Presley, what does the note mean for your story with Elvis? She paused. Cameras clicked. Rain speckled her coat. It means, she said softly, the story is kinder than we told it. The answer spread online within minutes, carried across headlines and fan pages. But inside the gallery, the last echo of his voice still lingered in the air like incense. What happens when strangers share the same tear? Can a single sentence hand you back years you thought were lost? That night, Graceland wasn't a museum. It was a heartbeat, and for the first time since 1977, the world listened like it was hearing Elvis Presley live again. The next morning, the world was humming. Clips of visitors crying spread across social media. But the sentence everyone repeated wasn't the lyric. It was Priscilla's answer. It means the story is kinder than we told it. That single line became the heartbeat of something new. Within a month, the EAP Promise Fund was born, small grants for young parents chasing music while raising children alone. Learned with you became its motto. Studios opened their doors after hours. Guitars were donated in memory of the note. Fans began leaving letters at the alcove. One read, Your apology helped me call my father. Another, I'm keeping my baby. Because of you. The alcove became a quiet sanctuary. People whispered rather than spoke. On the glass beside the letter, A small brass plaque gleamed. For anyone learning love the long way. Local papers called it Graceland's Heartbeat Room. A journalist wrote, "Visitors don't take selfies here. They take a breath." Priscilla visited often, usually alone, slipping in before the first tour. She'd stand before the tape player, close her eyes and whisper, "He finally said it." Then she'd leave a fresh magnolia bloom beneath the case. What if love's last words were meant to become someone else's first step? Can an artifact heal the living as much as it remembers the dead? Outside, fans still gathered under the blue gates, humming softly, the tune everyone knew, but now with a single gentle change. "For my love is learned with you." And just like that, a 47-year silence had turned into a song that belonged to everyone. Inside the gallery, Priscilla paused one final time, touched the glass and smiled, as if she were setting a stone down, not carrying one anymore. Evening light poured through the stained glass windows of the archive gallery, washing the room in gold. The last visitors of the day drifted out quietly, their footsteps soft on the marble. When the final door closed, Priscilla remained. She stood in front of the glass case, the letter on one side, the cassette on the other, each a fragile bridge between what was and what endured. For a moment, she let the silence breathe. The same silence that had once terrified him. Now it felt like peace. Miriam entered softly, holding a clipboard. "We'll seal the room overnight, ma'am." Priscilla smiled. He'd like that. He always believed love needed guarding. She traced the faint outline of the water stain on the letter. "You know," she said, "people think the king's story ended on a bathroom floor. But maybe it ended here, where he finally said the right words." Miriam nodded, and the world finally heard them. The lights dimmed. The faint hum of the tape deck lingered like a heartbeat refusing to fade. Outside, the brass plaque caught the sunset. "For anyone learning love the long way." For years, fans would remember this moment as the night Elvis spoke again. But those who were there, those who felt the air shift when that lyric changed, knew it wasn't about resurrection. It was about redemption. Love, it seemed, didn't stop with a curtain call. Kept teaching. Quietly, Priscilla whispered, "He was always chasing grace. I think he finally caught it." She turned to leave, but before she did, she pressed her hand gently against the glass. The tape began to rewind itself automatically. A soft whir, almost like breathing. And just before it clicked to a stop, Elvis's voice came through once more, faint but clear. "Good night. Not goodbye. Good night." It was the kind of ending that didn't close a door, it opened one. In that final breath, the story found its shape. A man who learned love too late. A woman who forgave anyway. And a note that carried both their hearts beyond time. Love is often learned by losing and proved by how we repair. That was the true final lyric. Not written in pen or sung in melody, but lived through memory. The crowd, the flashbulbs, the spotlight, all gone. But somewhere, a record needle lifted. A heart softened. A father called his daughter. All because one man decided to say what he never could on stage. Some goodbyes arrive late on purpose so they can teach us how to love forward. If this story moved you, share it with someone you still owe a sentence to. Sometimes one line, written, spoken, or whispered, can change how someone remembers love. Because when Elvis finally said goodnight instead of goodbye, he reminded the world that love never really leaves. It just waits for us to listen again.